during the day. Got a great question you have from Cindy, which is up there on the screen, and I'll read it out if people are listening in on the podcast. How do you create a conducive environment for working and studying when the disruptions are external, i.e. from random visits from family and friends, or deliveries from Take-A-Lot, or needing to let somebody in and they've rung the bell and you don't want to keep them waiting, but you don't want to be rude and leave the Zoom call? Practical ideas for dealing with those kind of situations, Milani.
The one thing I think is that we have to accept that those are going to happen. So, you're never going to be able to eliminate all of them. However, I think it is important to create focus time for you. And so when you're scheduling your stuff, be aware of what is normally happening around you. So if in the course we actually go on in terms of when is your most productive creative time, and to actually protect that so that you can work and do deep work, creative work, focused work without distractions. So you also want to schedule your stuff in hour and a half blocks. And I go in the course in terms of the research why that is good to not go over an hour and a half. 90 minutes is the optimum time for you to do a time block in. So what I would do is to schedule a 90-minute time block, and then to communicate with people that I think might be distracting me, or might be coming in to knock on my door. Or so if it's family, for instance, if I tell my husband that I'm not available for the next 90 minutes because I'm going to be doing this, then he knows, okay, I will be out and I'll take a mindful break and I'll walk around and I'll be able to talk with him and visit and drink coffee or do whatever he needs doing. But at the end of the 90 minutes. So you can put something on your door, do not disturb, focus time, please be quiet, something like that. But I think there's a communication that we're setting the time aside, and we're communicating that with the people that we think need to know and that might be distracting us the most. And then you turning off your phone, so that your phone is not constantly beeping and putting up WhatsApp messages, etc. So you're creating a container of time for you where there are less distractions. And if there then is a doorbell that rings that you couldn't account for, then you go into acceptance of what is in the moment, and you deal with it without, all of those negative emotions. Oh, they're bothering me, etc. So you're aware of your state, and you dealing with it a bit more resiliently and not going into a whole story or judgment about it, and then go back to whatever it is that you were doing, to your focus time. But so it's basically two things. The one is to see what is the normal pattern of behavior that is happening here, and when can I schedule that time in a way that I can create this container for myself where there's less chance of distraction. How can I communicate with the people that are distracting me? Or how can I turn off the phone, turn off the distractions, or lessen them in some way? And then the third one is acceptance when they happen, and not go into a whole negative spin around it, but just deal with it and go back to whatever it is that you were doing. But it's important to create that time, because otherwise you never really get as much stuff done. And there's in terms of studying specifically, your brain also has the switch cost. So when you actually look up from whatever it is that you were studying and you're going to do something else, it takes your brain about 10 minutes to go back to where you were immersed into your material. And so you do want to lessen that as much as you can.
And that switch cost that you talk about there, and the fact that we don't have a transition between our work and our home environments anymore, which we might have had on the bus or the train or walking or in the car, etc., because we just go from the bedroom to the living room to the kitchen, and we live at work and we work at home, we don't have that context switching. So we've got to compensate for that somehow, which, as you say, is that protection of the time that recenters us and helps us recreate our presence again. But if something goes wrong and those boundaries are blurred and we didn't manage to do the planning, just bring the laughter or bring the fun, non-judgmental response into it. If the doorbell goes, no one's really going to be all that upset with you. Just make a light moment of it and immerse yourself in that moment and the vulnerability, I think, of that reality, because that's the lived reality that we're all grappling with. And certainly my own experience in a large, bank, in a very formal working environment, is right from the top to the bottom. Everybody accepts that the rules have changed. Things are a lot more unpredictable, and nobody's really expected to have it all quite figured out just yet. So a lot of the pressure is what we place on ourselves through that judgmental, that self-judgmental sort of type of mindset, which, as you say, also creates the cascading effect for not only messing up that particular moment, but then a whole series of moments and the rest of the day, becomes a mess, etc. So I love your idea around the containers and the art of the richly textured moments, and a lot of what you talked about that comes through in the course. So Melanie, we've got about 10-15 minutes left. I think we do have a couple of comments there. Cindy says, thanks, Melanie, appreciate that. I could also just mention that I put a link to our course in the chat. So that's free enrollment. I think it's going to run out in the next couple of days. Hours, actually, to be honest. So you need to just jump on there and enroll. And then once you enroll, you'll always have access to it. As with all my courses, I think everybody on the course probably fairly used to how it works. So do jump in there. And please do leave a review and a rating for us on the course. Melanie is very active in the course. And every time anybody introduces themselves and talks about what they want to achieve with mindfulness, Melanie will respond to you and guide you and perhaps help you with some specific insights for your specific needs. If you're able to mention that in the course introduction, which we provide for you. Melanie, I think just a couple last closing thoughts, as we wrap up this webinar today on mindfulness. One of the things that we spoke about in the course and that you did mention earlier was how a lot of large organizations and companies are bringing mindfulness into their workplace wellness practices. And I think in the course, I actually present a couple of case studies. Goldman Sachs, Asana, and Intel are the three case studies that we talk about in the course, which really just shows how mindfulness is becoming very important in the workplace. And I touch on my own experience at FirstRand of an award-winning wellness team, which you and I actually met with and talked through about mindfulness in preparation for this course. And I've experienced the importance of having a wellness team that's very focused on mindfulness. But Melanie, the question for you then, and what I talked about with Goldman Sachs, for example, is that, and like for an investment banking firm, typically the focus was just on the numbers, and they created a lot of pressure through that. And they previously had what they would call stress management programs. But those were, again, just very symptomatic in nature and treating the problem rather than the cause.